President Marcos, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you very much indeed.
In your speech to the Australian Parliament, you used unusually strong language. Quoting your own pledge, you said, "I will not allow any attempt by any foreign power to take even 1 inch of our sovereign territory. We will not yield." Are you talking about not giving up Philippines' territory in the South China Sea?
Absolutely. It is my sworn duty, and the sworn duty of the entire government of the Republic of the Philippines to defend the Constitution of the Philippines. And the first article of the Constitution is the definition of our territorial waters.
You didn't name China either in your answer or indeed in the speech that you gave to Australia, but it appears to be present in every security move that you make, and indeed behind every speech that we've seen you make recently. How urgent a priority is it to counter the fast-growing military power of China?
Well, we don't see it in those terms. We don't see it as countering the military power of any country whatsoever. It's merely the defense of our territory. We have territorial conflicts with other countries, Malaysia, for example, and Vietnam. But we have come to an arrangement with them, and to resolve any such conflicts peacefully.
So, I mean, I'm right in saying that you don't have that capacity to resolve conflict with China in the same way. Do you actually have direct contact with the Chinese?
We have at several levels. In fact, in January of last year, when I went to Beijing and I visited with President Xi Jinping, that is what I proposed, a kind of hotline between us, so that if there is a message that needed to be sent from one president to another, we can be assured that that message will reach them. And we have sort of established there are several points of contact. At the ministerial level, certainly, and a sub-ministerial level as well.
But do you have a personal line to President Xi?
Not yet, I'm afraid.
Let me just ask you this question. I want to come to the what it is that you want from Australia, because that's obviously one of the reasons for your visit and your speech, as well as ASEAN. But the former president of the Philippines, Duterte, was making overtures to China, very strong ones. Have you decisively moved away from Chinese influence and back into America's orbit?
Well, I think it's important to make it very, very clear.
You don't think that your language that you used when you took office, and the same language that you used in the Australian Parliament during your visit, is a message to China about where you believe your interests lie?
Well, as I explained it to President Xi again, I said it's my duty. I took an oath to defend the Philippines. And anyone who will help me in that regard, I must engage with them.
Was your predecessor getting too close to China?
Well, I think the situation between now and then is quite different. And I'm sure he did what was in his judgment was the best. He did hew a little closer to China rather than the United States. And maybe because things have heated up a little bit. But we have together with Australia, we have a visiting forces agreement with the United States and Australia. These are the only two countries that we have them with. And we have a mutual defense treaty with the United States, which has been there for decades.
How important is it, from your point of view, that Australia has chosen to acquire and build a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines?
Well, that decision is an Australian one.
Do you support it?
I support AUKUS. I support the Quad, and I think that this just represents a stronger front in terms of maintaining the peace, maintaining the peace in the South China Sea. It is a response, really, to a differing situation. A more dangerous, more risky situation than we had before.
Why is it more dangerous? Just explain.
Because the potential for outright conflict is much higher now than it was before. And we worry in the Philippines because it could come from not a strategic decision by anyone saying, okay, we're going to war, but just by making some serviceman making a mistake or some action that's misunderstood. And that's why the ongoing attempt is always to try and lower the temperature, ease up on the rhetoric, and communicate, and just continue to communicate.
That's why you need the phone, the same phone that Khrushchev and Kennedy had, right?
That's right. Yes.
Well, let me try and understand what you might want from Australia. Would you expect the Australian Navy to come to the defence of Philippines forces in the event of conflict with China over disputed territory in the South China Sea?
Well, I suppose if we are in a we are in a joint exercise or in a joint operation, then perhaps that would involve Australia in that. But we do not have any formal agreement or treaty in that regard, as we do with the United States.
How would you explain to Australians, to Australian servicemen or women, why they should potentially risk their lives in the aid of Philippines under pressure from China? Why do we belong there?
Well, let me take us back to the Second World War, where the defense of Corregidor and Bataan, which were the outposts that held out longest. But because of that, it delayed the invasion of Australia to the point that the Japanese never invaded Australia. And that, if we can stop it at an early stage, nip it at the bud, as it were, then there is no need for it to grow into other areas, other regions. And hopefully, if we can, at best, as I said, keep the peace in the South China Sea, that will be of great advantage to Australia, because the peace is maintained.
In relation to the former president, it's clear from the outside that there's been some breakdown in the relationship. I mean, do you intend now to invite the ICC to the Philippines to conduct its investigation more fully into former President Duterte's murderous war on drugs?
No, that would be a political move. And what we are, we do not play politics with jurisdiction and sovereignty. And the position that we've taken is that we do not recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC, and we view it as a threat to sovereignty, simply because the ICC was formed to conduct, to provide justice to areas where there is no judiciary, where there is no court system, where there is no police, where there is no peace and order. And that's not the Philippines. And therefore, I don't think that their investigations or their actions apply to the Philippines.
If it's not the ICC, then who provides justice for the many thousands? I think the number is something like 12 to 30,000 people who were killed in former President Duterte's war on drugs. How do they get justice?
I think we in the Philippines have, as I said, a functioning police force. We have a functioning judiciary, and that it is their responsibility to take care of that. We have made a great deal of progress in that regard, where many policemen have already been removed from service because they've been found to be liable. Their cases have been filed. Many are already in jail.
Do you think it adds up to justice for those people who lost their lives?
Well, what we try to do is to now go back to the families of those and see that perhaps see what we can do to make things right for them. As long as it can be shown, of course, that they were not actually involved in the drug trade. As I said very early on, we're not interested in a small-time addict, for example. The addict, you take them to the hospital, you take them to rehab.
You don't shoot them.
We don't. We said we've taken enforcement as far as we can, and it only gets you so far.
Your father was overthrown by a people's revolution, and you are his only son. How do you resist the impulse to authoritarianism?
I have no impulses to authoritarianism whatsoever. We have a good system going. We are, I think we've learned to. We have a constitution that we have that we have gone by for the last 36 years now. We are hoping to make some changes to it, but. No, I have not felt any tug or temptation to make it a more authoritarian system.
You've been a politician for a very long time. You have a very clear understanding of your country's history, and you obviously revere your father. I've seen you talk about him. Do you also understand the costs of his authoritarian rule to people in the Philippines?
Well, it was a very different sort of authoritarian rule. I think when people think of an authoritarian rule, it was non-participatory. Whereas I think the version that my father tried to promote and actually practiced was very much still with the participation of all stakeholders that were involved. It was just a peace and order situation that really dictated the necessity for the declaration of martial law.
Let me just understand make sure that we're talking about the same thing. I think Amnesty records that during that period, 70,000 people were imprisoned, 34,000 tortured, and 3,200 people killed are the numbers. And your father, in an interview, admitted that over 50,000 were detained. So I just want to ask you again, do you accept that there was a human cost to that rule?
There always is. It was war. And with war, the death and destruction is inevitable. But this is a war not declared by the government of the Philippines. This was declared a war. These wars were declared on the government of the Philippines, and both of them were. One was to divide the country, and the other one was to remove the present political system by armed struggle.
There is one series of questions that comes up in relation to your father's time, which is of course the question of corruption, which became wholly associated with the Philippines for a long period of time. I think contemporary court judgments acknowledge the atrocities that were committed, but also the plunder of the country's resources. Why wouldn't you want all of that money back in the hands of the Filipino people?
Well, the narrative.
May I just ask you why that's funny?
Why
that's funny? I'm asking you a question about the plundering of large sums of money from the Filipino people.
I'm thinking that maintains, that idea maintains, because I take exception to many of the assertions that have been made, and I think we have since the cases were filed, the government fell. Cases were filed against me, my family, the estate, etc. And up to now, we have found the assertions that were made, we have shown to be untrue.
Quite a lot of money. I think 5 billion was already recovered. I guess the question is just this: do you not want to see all the money that was taken returned to the people?
We have signed. This family has signed a quitclaim. Signed many quitclaims. Any money that you find is yours. And finish. And everything was taken from us. We were taken to Hawaii. Everything was taken from us. We had nothing left.
Not the view of the Presidential Commission.
I'm sorry?
Not the view of the Presidential Commission. This is my final question on this topic.
Which Presidential Commission?
In the Philippines. Their view is there's a large amount of money outstanding.
I think that having seen the facts as they have been slowly revealed, with further true investigation, not propaganda, but actual true investigation, like court cases and investigations by all kinds of NGOs, different agencies. Since that has changed, and people can see that it was propaganda.
I suppose the question is, other countries in the region, including Australia, want to know that the Philippines, and you in particular, as a Marcos, have come to terms with your family's history.
There was a time where the issue was Marcos. That's not the case anymore. And that's why I think the best proof of that is my election.
President Marcos, thank you very much indeed for speaking to 7:30.
Thank you.